once we do get signed in here is a quick look at one of the newer features that released in 5 has been improved in version 6, which is the mapping capabilities. Mapping for years has been kind of it works, but we need something flashier, or we need something prettier, or we need to be able to easily get down to postal codes, or something like that. So the new Cognos Analytics integrates with the Mapbox product, and will eventually open up a whole world of maps that we can use within Cognos Analytics. Right now, there are some limited features that are coming in. We're not able to do everything that we will be able to eventually do with mapping, but the new mapping features are actually quite impressive. So what we are going to take a look at inside of here is the new dashboarding tool, which is built into Cognos Analytics. And we're going to take a look at creating bringing in a new file, and then creating a new dashboard with that file to show some of the mapping functionality. So what I'm going to get you to, actually I'm going to get you to watch one piece first. Because I couldn't distribute the file to everyone beforehand for the upload, I'm just going to show you what it looks like when I upload it, and then I'll make it available for you that you can take a look at it. So one of the newer features of Cognos Analytics is the ability to upload a file and provide the ability for your users to upload files where they can then continue working with it in the Cognos Analytics tool. So in the interface that we will see here, there's a little upload button. And if you have an Excel file on your machine that might have rows and columns of data, you could do an upload from your own machine onto the server, and you are able to upload CSV files or Excel files at this point. So I'm going to upload one that has census data for California by zip code within here. And it's just a simple little file. I'll bring it up here. And so once I choose to upload that file, which I apparently have already uploaded, it's going to load it into the Cognos Analytics environment for us. So when you upload, and this you won't see this in your world right now, but it will upload to your My Content. Now, if you're familiar with Cognos 10, My Content is your My Folders from before. So when you do an upload, it is a part of the Cognos Analytics world, but it gets uploaded into your My Content, or your My Folders. So you're the only one who can see it at this point. So from here, if it was something you needed other users to have access to, you can come over and copy that to your public folders if you're a Cognos 10 user. Cognos 11 is now called Team Content. So we can copy it over. And I have a Bacon folder up here, and I'll copy it over here from there. So you can upload a file, and had I not already had a version of it up here, it would show me a list of the columns that are inside of this file, and I can set a little bit of information about it. Now, so at this point, you can jump in if you're following along and you want to follow with me. In the Bacon folder, you should see under Team Content, which is the third icon down on the side. Under Bacon, you'll see that we have two different files in here right now, and the one in the top is our 2010 census populations by zip code CSV file that I just uploaded. So we move that one over. Now, without having to do a lot of modeling or a lot of fancy importing or anything like that, we can go directly from here and we can create a new dashboard. So if you click on the three dots at the end of the census data, you have the option to do create a dashboard. So this is another new tool in Cognos Analytics, something that hasn't existed in the Cognos 10 world. This is not Workspace, which is still there. This is our new dashboarding tool. And it takes a lot of its functionality from Watson And so it has a lot, it's really a great ad hoc tool for, it could be your business users. It's not, you don't get into queries or things like that. It's very drag and drop friendly. And it does a lot of the thinking for you when you start to drag your data over here. So when you start off in the dashboarding tool, you get to pick up your template. So we're just going to pick any one of these templates to get started here. I'm just going to take the second one down. And as I said, this will bring us into our dashboard tool with our new uploaded file that we just brought over. Is everybody able to get this far? Okay, awesome. Okay, so one of the things with this tool, this is, as I said, a very simple data source that I brought over. Zip code, total population, median age, total males, total females. Very simple Excel file, CSV file that we uploaded. So when you're building in the dashboard tool, one of the best features is you don't have to know right off the top of your head what you want your data to look like. It will suggest a type of data for you. So if you select something like a zip code that has this little geography icon next to it, and you choose population using your control key on the side, and you drag it over into the center of your screen. Now there's a little drop here to maximize. If you can drop it right on top of the blue icon there, what you'll see is that it will look at the data as soon as you have something with geography data attached to it, and it will say, hey, you probably want to see this as a map from here. Okay? Now, it's not working exactly right now. We have to add one more piece of information to it, but it did a little analysis for us and said, okay, this looks like it's map. Now, you'll see right now there's nothing colored on our map, so we have to add another piece of information, which we're going to take care of in just a second. But we do have the ability to do that. Now, if I wanted to see what the data looked like and I didn't want to see it as a map, we can switch the display that it gave us over to, if you click on the white area at the top of the map, you'll get a little pop-up menu here, and you can switch the visualization to something else. So I'm going to switch over from here, let's say, to a grid option. We're going to go fix the other one in a second. Where's my grid?
Down and to the left.
I might not see it yet.
Back up. Stop.
Grid. Thank you. Sorry. Maybe too much coffee. I don't know. So you can see we have zip codes in with the and total population for those values. So again, we can switch the display around. Now, but I really do want a map, and I want to see the data mapped using one of those map options. So what we're going to do is I'm actually going to go back to the welcome screen. So in Cognos Analytics, one of the big design thoughts with this product is, instead of like Cognos 10, where we have many different tools that we open as we're working through, the idea with Cognos Analytics is to have that consistent view, even if we are opening separate tools. So it should all look alike. So authoring looks similar to this, as well as our main page. So at the very top, we have a little drop down where it says New Dashboard. If you click on that new dashboard, you can see we have a welcome option here. So that's how we can navigate around within the analytics tool. So the problem with our map before is we had a postal zone, but it didn't know what region it was associated to. So we need a little bit of more information in that very simple file. So one of the things I wanted to do next was create a data module from our upload and add one more piece of information. There are a couple different ways we could do this one. So one of the new features within Cognos Analytics is the ability to upload files. Another new feature within Cognos Analytics overall is the ability to create your own little mini framework manager-like model. So if you're used to the Cognos 10 world. And instead of having to go off to another tool, we can do it right from our Cognos Analytics window. So what we're going to do is over on the side, on the black bar, we're going to click on the New button. And that New button here has the different types of content we can create. So the one we're going to look at right now is the one that says Data Module. So Data Module. And as I said, for my Cognos 10 people, this is like creating a little mini framework manager model where we can create joins and relationships. We can also create calculations. We can clean our data. We can do a whole lot of different things. We're not going to go too deep into this right now. We're going to come back to this one in a few minutes. But what I'd like to do is pick an uploaded file as our source. So you should see uploaded files as one of our options. And within here, you should see the 2010 census populations from there. Now, I'll have two. You probably will only have one. We're looking for the one that says team content and bacon for the source file that we're looking for here. So if you just put a little check mark next to that one, you'll see that we have our source over on this side. Questions or anything so far? So we've uploaded a file, and now we're going to make a little framework model, framework-like model based on it. So we're going to click Start over on this side. And you'll see that we have our source file that we've uploaded. And to create as I said, this mini model that we're going to work with, we just have to drag it either over to the white space here or on top of this section here with the B. I don't know why it's a B. All right. So we'll take the 2010 census populations and just drag it on top of new data module or over onto the white area. Now, if we were working with a data source where we had tables and different items like that, we would create relationships between them and all this. This is just a simple one right now. So what I'd like to do with this is I'd like to come over to my new data module in the center. And I want a new calculator column. So our problem with our map is that we don't know which country the postal code belongs to. So what I'd like to do in this case is I just want to create a calculated column that says country, or that's called country, and then I'm just going to put United States in there so I can refine my location for my map. So to do that, I'm just going to click on the 2010 census population in the center, and using the little 3 dots button, which you'll get used to if you work with Cognos here, I'm going to create a custom calculation here. So click on the 3 dots and create a custom calculation. So this is our expression editor within data modules. It's gotten better over time. It's still a bit simplistic at this point, so hopefully it'll get more drag and drop and have more features included inside of it. Right now you kind of have to know what you're typing into this little window, but we're going to give it a name of country. And then I want to put the country's value here. So the maps that we have use some standard terminology within here. We could use, I think, USA. We could use US. I'm going to use United States, which is one of the things it recognizes. So I'm going to put a single quote, and I'm going to type in United States. Now, this isn't... anytime you use an uploaded file as a source, you often have to do a bit of data manipulation with your source. So I could have gone into the CSV file, added a column for a country, and put United States within here. If I had a mix of data from Canada and the United States, I could have in the Excel file done something to fix this. But since I'm just using a very simple file, and I know it's all in California, I'm going to just put in United States inside of here. So I know that matches my data for here. So single quotes around United States. There is a validate button, which should tell you it's valid or not. And I can click OK here. Now, I can leave it like this, but one last step I want to do in this data module is I'd like to indicate that the country that I'm looking at is a column that has geographic data inside of it. It's not necessary in this step, but it's useful. So I'm going to click on the new column we've created. I'm going to click on the 3 dots again, and I'm going to go to the properties. And if you've worked in Framework Manager before, we had different types of usage that we've used. So I want to make sure it says that it's an attribute, so that part's okay. But under represent, they've given you 2 options here. It can either be geography or time, or you can just leave it. But ours is geography, so I'm going to switch it over to geographic location. And then I'm going to say that it's not just a geographic location, it's a country within here. And that will help when it comes to associating with a map and having it dragged on. As I said, it wasn't absolutely necessary, but it's useful. There. So properties of country, and then I can just close the X over to do that. So there's our first little simple data module using one of the new features, which allows us to work with an uploaded file and give it a little bit more context to make it more useful in our reporting world. So we can do that. So I'd like you to come over and just click Save. Now you're all signed in as the same user right now. If you went into My Folders and you all named this census data, it's going to be the slowest wins in the end there. So what I'm going to get you to do is when you do a save, I'd like you to save it to team content and save it to the Bacon folder. And then we'll call it census. And then just put your name in underscore or your initials or something. So I'm going to put Sonia, so don't put Sonia. Something. Put whatever you like after here to identify yourself. And I'm going to click Save. So we now have an uploaded file, and then we also now have a data module that works as using our uploaded file from here. So once again, I'm going to come back to the welcome we have here, and I'm going to go back to the welcome there. Now, for those of you who came from Cognos 10 world, when we were doing authoring or anything within Cognos through Report Studio or anything like that, we could only have one thing open at a time. You'll notice that now we can have many things open at a time, and this is kind of the way you navigate through those things that we have open. So I'm going to come back to welcome. Now, had I not created a new data module that I wanted to use for the source, I could have just gone back into my map and I could have worked through the dashboard that I've already created. What we're going to do this time is come back over to team content, which is here on the side. And we're going to go into that Bacon folder. And look at you all following. Good. Okay. And you're going to find the one that you created. And using the 3 dots at the side, I'd like you to create a dashboard based on that one. So there's, again, as with everything in Cognos, there's 10 different ways to do it. This is one of the ways to create our dashboard. And we're going to choose whichever style, again, we want to use for the layout for our dashboard. Let me go back again. So I'll step back to that again. So team content on the side, the Bacon folder, there right at the top, and then find whichever one that you saved for here. Or if you didn't save one, you could use the one that I used. So you can use mine for here. We'll click the 3 dots next to that, and we're going to create a new dashboard. So this view that we're looking at right now is actually like the public folders view we had in Cognos Connections. So if you're a Cognos 10 person, this is our public folders. And instead of a file structure looking option, kind of that old style that we had before, we now have these flyout menus that allow us to find our data through here. So we can do that. We'll create a dashboard, and it should open a whole new one. So again, on this version, you can pick any template you like. I'm going to take the very first one right here. And you should see the new data that's here. Now, I'm going to do the same thing we did last time. I'm going to control-click on zip code. I'm going to control-click on total population, and I'm going to drag them back into my display. here. So zip code and total population. And I'm going to use my control key and hold it down and drag it over into the display we have here. And it still doesn't work. We're going to fix that. So once we have our map, I'm going to use the up arrow on the side of our map, the right top corner where it says expand, if you put your mouse over it. And that opens up the object so that we can manipulate the data inside. So we're going to do that. So everything I've showed you so far is all in the versions up to 6. It came in 5, by 5. What did come in the newer version of 6 is the ability to refine a region. So the maps were a bit limited in the first version because you couldn't go in and say, here's where I'm talking, here's what I'm talking about. So if I were mapping cities and you put in Springfield, there'll be Springfields in multiple states. We didn't have it refined. So now in version 6 of 11, you have the refined regions. That's why we created the country column. So I'd like you to drag the country column and drop it to where it says refined regions. So far our maps are a bit boring right now, but as we drag over and we drop it into refined regions, and if you close if you collapse using the same arrow again, what you'll see now is it refined our information to the United States. It used that zip code information to narrow into just this area of California where we were passing in those values. And then we can start to manipulate the map a little bit. So I have to change my resolution to project. It has to be pretty small. So let me just see if we can zoom in here. So you can double click on the map to navigate around. Sorry, let me see if I can make it move without, sorry, not the data tray. I need the panning. All right. This is a user issue with the mouse. 1 second. So you can start to navigate around. Sorry, I just have to get it. Right now I'm moving the object. I'm trying to move the panning within. But you can take a look. You can see the population on here. This is one of the maps that just comes, if you install Cognos, this is what's included. You can see that it also has roads on it. If you keep zooming in, you can map a lot of information on here, and you get right down to the street level within here. So that's as I said, this was a new feature that came in release 5, but the ability to map right to zip codes came in, I think in release 5 you could only do to the state level. Is that correct, Ryan? Do you know it was 5 in the state?
Yeah.
And then 6 released the ability to go down to zip code. We still can't map down to an actual street, which is hopefully what's coming in soon with the later releases. I make no promises, but hopefully. And then what still isn't here in mapping yet is the ability to put your own maps in and then continue working that. And that's coming. That's part of the whole idea of integrating with Mapbox. So that's mapping in dashboards. Does anybody have any questions about that? Yeah.
I know this is census data.
Yeah.
Do you have the micropolitan statistical areas, MSAs, and CDAs or CSAs?
Does it go to that? I don't actually remember what goes into.
I don't think it does at this point. So the long-term vision, I don't know if anybody went to the mapping presentation at World of Watson in October, but the long-term vision would be there's going to be like a map store. So Pitney Bowes is providing the base layers for these maps, and you'd be able to go into the map store and they'll have a number of them for free, and then there'll be other ones that you would need to pay for. And they said there's going to be thousands of them. They gave examples like you could have a map that would divide it, give you a map layer that would give you a radius around every elementary school in the United States of 300 feet if you were planning, I don't know what, but you needed that information, right? That was the example they gave. So stuff like that, and they made it sound like kind of the publicly available stuff is going to be free, and then there's going to be custom stuff like that other example where, hey, they built that, so if you want that, you have to pay for it. But if you want a census map layer or like what you're referencing, you know, that would be something that you could just go on and
It
download.
was-
Now, when is that coming? I have no idea. But that will be there. And then also the ability to define your own regions. So if you want to say, hey, in my company, we have this region called Midwest. It's Illinois, Ohio, you know, Indiana, Wisconsin, and Michigan. You would be able to go in, define that area, tell Cognos, hey, this equals Midwest, and then anytime you were working with data that had that region field, it would automatically plot it onto the map with the custom region you would define.
Thank you.
Like I said, when is that coming? I don't know. But they did show a little bit of it at World of Lots. Any other
This
questions?
is not you. Sorry. Give me 1 second.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is like a. Okay, I'll make it right to look at that one while you're.
Sure.
Go ahead, you're fine.
That's not a user. That's an issue with the server. All right. So, so as I said, one of the things that came in was, yeah. So there's just an example of the different. This is what's in 6 right now with the different Pitibos maps that are there as we speak. So you can map things like counties. You can map things like zip codes. And each country has its own administrative boundaries that you'll put in, so you have to sort of know that as you go along. We took a look at that, refining regions, so that we can get rid of some of that ambiguity. One of the things you'll notice is if you do put a map together and your data doesn't match what's inside of the map, that the map doesn't have, you'll get this little icon here where you'll see what's wrong with the map. Unfortunately, if you work with maps in Cognos 10, there was a dictionary where you could say, hey, if I call it USA and you call it United States, this is what we're talking about. That feature hasn't come in yet. So we have to do what I did, which was create that new column that kind of fixed it to do it. But it's better than it was at 5, and it will be better in future releases for fixing some of these issues. But I think you can see some of the power of what's coming with the maps. One of the other things that we have with the dashboards and the maps is the ability to change a few of the properties. So this is your properties icon in Cognos Analytics, and it's not showing by default. So if you're used to Report Studio and the properties window is always there, we need to turn it on and off with this. But you can change the color palette within here, and you can also change the style of the map. So there's a whole bunch of different options where you can switch around colors to make it match your dashboard in a better way. So this is, as I said, this new little dashboard tool. It's called a dashboarding tool. It really could be thought of almost more like a more powerful query studio. This is really a tool where your user can very quickly get content and build reports. If this is, I think you'll see this as the replacement for Query. Query Studio is still there right now if you need it. But this is probably your option for that. Yeah.
Do you know if you can get rid of the details? Like say I'm doing something on the zip code, I only want to see the outline of the zip code. When I start zooming in, I got all this clutter from
the streets and all that stuff. I don't know right now. Does anybody know if you can get rid of it? I don't think you can today. But hopefully when we can replace the maps with other things, we can probably get rid of it.
There's an
So,
explanation.
right now we're looking at the feature that you like or you don't, with streets. Let me just see if it changes, if I change the property though.
If you go into the country definition,
1 second. So,
What was the question?
oh, sorry. The question was, can you get rid of the streets? So in my case, I can see the streets right now, and they do look a bit busy. If I can zoom out here 1 second. I don't think you can. Yeah, the streets are on it no matter what. I think right now. So I'll look into it and see, but I don't think you can change that at this point. Any other questions with mapping at all, or
I have a question about filtering.
Yes.
How we can apply the filter on specific item instead of applying all the graph?
On
Edited or something?
So there's a couple ways. So the question is about filtering in the dashboard, in dashboards in general.
Yes.
So you don't have the filtering capabilities, the full filtering capabilities you have in Report, like in Report Studio, Report Authoring. You can still filter on a couple of different places. You can actually filter on the source, or you can filter on the object itself when you're doing it.
So if you click
Let me pull up an example here. There. So there's, as I said, a couple different ways you can filter. You can filter on the data, the data tray, which kind of filters on the source that you're looking at. And really, it's not the complex filters we're used to in regular querying or authoring. It's much more about picking a value that you're looking at, or a few values. The other place where we could put filters on would be, if we really did need to filter this thoroughly, we could go back to that data module that we created, and we could filter from there. Or you have the option on, pull my display over here. Usually have a little bit more room on this one. You can also drag local filters and put them into the filters option here. And again, they're very simplistic filters. There's nothing fancy.
So if you highlight on a specific view of the graph, does it apply the filter or no?
So that's a slightly different version of the filter as well. This is a terrible example, just because the source is so small. Let me just see what I can do here. So when you click on, let's say I clicked on a particular county or whatever it was, the zip code that I was on, you can also keyboard exclude it here. So normally you can do that. I'm going to show you the sort of next example that I'm going to show you is how you can basically set the interaction between these objects. So in this dashboarding tool, every object, if it comes from the same source, if you click on it, we'll filter all the other objects. So that's kind of the next step we're going to do. So we'll put together another dashboard. We'll get an idea of how that fits together. Here, did that fix? Did you get in? Sorry, that was crazy. All right. So hold the question on filtering. We'll come right back to it in just a second. Let me remove this up. We're going to stick with dashboards for a minute, as it is one of the newer, more exciting features for there. Has anybody played with the dashboards before, or is it new? Is there, spend some time? Some of the newer things that have come in the last little while for dashboards have been the ability to use cubes as dimensional sources in your dashboards. Again, the idea that you'll hear is that this dashboard tool may be a replacement for Analysis Studio, or it may be a replacement for PowerPlay Studio. And you can now use those cubes or dimensional sources in your dashboards. The other enhancement, and this one I love, is the ability to control, we call these little dashboard pieces widgets within this dashboard tool. And in the first releases of the product, one issue we had is if you want the dashboard objects to be unrelated, there wasn't a way to do that. You had to kind of work around and create different data sources so they weren't coming from the same spot. So I want to take a look at that one in particular. That's the demo we're going to take a look here. We could use cubes in as in our dashboards. We'll come back to this. The only rule for this is that it has to be, if you're using a PowerPlay cube, will work the way it is. If you're using a DMR package, it either has to be DQM or it has to have a JDBC connector on it. Otherwise, it should just work the other way. So different cubes that you can bring in and use as part of your dashboard. And what that means, even when you bring those in, you have the same drill down capabilities you would have had in Analysis Studio or PowerPlay Studio, where you can double click on an item in the map or on the grid and go to the next level from there. All right. So here's what I wanted to talk about, which is taking a look at these widget connections. This is what I love this feature of the dashboard tool. I think this is going to make the dashboard much more powerful and much more user-friendly as we start to work. So here's our business problem. We want to have a dashboard that shows the data from multiple years. And what I'd like to be able to do is have one chart that's going to show me 2012 data, and one chart that's going to show me 2013 data using the Go Sales old data that we were looking at. And I want to be able to have prompts to let the users pick what they're going to see, which year they want to look at. The problem, as I said in the past, is that we could, if we clicked on one prompt, it would filter all of the different controls that we would have. So we're going to see how we can work around that one. So we're going to go build another new dashboard. So what I'd like you to do this time is I'm going to click on the new button on the side. And if you want to follow along, great. If you want to watch, great, whatever you like. But we're going to create a new dashboard. And this time what I'd like to do is I want a particular template. So the one I'm looking for is the template that has two small rectangles on the top and one big space. No, is there a better one? We'll do that one for now. Here, that was not exactly right, but it'll work. All right, so our selected source this time. So we used an uploaded file last time to build a dashboard. We also used a data module to build a dashboard. What I'd like to do now is actually use an existing framework manager package that, one of our governed packages where we have all of our rules brought in already and all that. And we're going to add that as our source. So under selected sources at the top, you have the little plus sign right here. We're going to click that selected source. And this time I'd like you to go into the folder called samples. So team content, team content samples, then models, and I want you to choose the one that says Go Data Warehouse Query. So team content, samples, models, and Go Data Warehouse Query. And then you can click Open once you find that path. All right, so this is just the IBM simple sample framework manager model that's been published up to our Cognos server. And this is, as I said, this is our corporate standard. All rules are defined. This is talking to our data warehouse. And within here, if you see it over on the side, I want to expand the folder called Sales and Marketing Query. And then I'm going to expand the one that says Sales Query from here. So Sales and Marketing Query and then Sales Query. So this is just our sample sales database. And what I want to do is I'd like to look at our revenue from 2000 and, let's see, our revenue by product line for years that we're looking at. So we'll start with just the first one to start. So what I'm going to do inside of here, and you can follow along if you like, so Go Data Warehouse Query, Sales and Marketing Query, and then Sales Query. And I'm going to expand the little icon that says Sales Fact. And I'm going to go find the revenue column within there. So one of the neat ways that you can build within our dashboard tool is you can start with one item and you can add more items to it as you go. So as a user, it's very simple. I don't have to create a query or pick a list or do any of that stuff. I can keep dragging and dropping until I get the view I'm looking for. So what I'm going to do is start and just take revenue and drag it to the center item in the middle. So right now, it's just looking at the total revenue for my whole company overall right now. So one big number from there. Then I'm going to scroll down, and I'm going to go find the one that says product. And I'm going to drag product line on top of my revenue. So I'm going to scroll down, find the one that says products, and then I'm going to grab product line and drop it on top where it says revenue. So what you'll see when I build with a dashboard is as I add more data, it's going to look at the data that I'm adding, and it's going to figure out what it thinks is probably the best way to display your data. So in this case, as I dragged it over, It put my product lines along the x-axis, my revenue along the y-axis, and I can see a bar that shows me that right now. So the one last thing I want to do is scroll down, and I want to go to the time query subject below, or the time little arrow, and I want to drag the year and drop year on top of that. And again, it adjusts and says, okay, well, you're looking at years. Maybe we're going to put this into a line graph at this point. All right. So that's one way we can create one of these little charts that we're looking at. So what I'd like to do now is I want to grab year again from the side. I want to grab the year. And I'm going to drag year and put it into the top option right here above it. So you get the little blue icon. Now, how many people have built Report Studio reports in the past with maybe prompt pages, and you have to create a filter and a parameter, and you have to do all that stuff? What's really nice in the dashboarding tool is if you drag just an item like year up into my display, notice what happens if I click on the year value here. It automatically creates a prompt that's going to, in this case, it's not filtering, it's selecting. But you'll see that it's highlighting if I highlight my year, it's selecting that year and showing it into the chart right away. I didn't do any fancy footwork there. It automatically does this based on the display that we have as we drag it over through here. Now, our problem comes, what happens if I want to have two different years and two different charts that maybe don't react to the same way to each other? So what I'm going to do two things here. I'm actually going to remove the year from our display here. I'm just going to take the year out. So the way I did this is I clicked on the option here, and I just deleted year from color in this case. Now if I select each year, you'll notice that the chart actually changes. I'm only looking at the year. So that's one way we could do filtering. We were talking about how do I filter within here. This is an easy way to do filtering. All right, so there's my one chart that I'm going to have. Now, I'm just going to adjust the size of my chart so that it will fit underneath the one I have above. Here. So I just use the little circle to drag it over. And what I would like to do this time is actually copy what I have here. And so if I click on the option here, this is your duplicate button at the top. I'm going to duplicate it and drag it over next to it from here. Now, the issue with this is each of these widgets they're all coming from the same source data, so they're all going to react together when I click on the next year. So if I pick another year at the top, and I do that, they're doing the same thing. They're moving together here. So I'm going to take another year item from my source, drag it up again. And what I'd like to do this time is I'd actually like to be able to pick a year in each one of these controls so that I can do that. I'll show you how I did that one just one more time. I just wanted to put this here. So let me take it back the two steps. So for the little chart, I use the duplicate to copy it, and I put it next to each other here. And then from the time query subject, I grabbed a year and I dropped it above again. All right. So right now they're tied together. I want them separate. The way that we can separate them is we have this as a new feature of release 6 at the top. You see where it says the Widget Connections at the top. If you click on Widget Connections, you'll see that right now they all have ones inside of them. What this means is everything is going to react. It's going to treat this as one connection that they're going to work with. So what we can do is if we want these two to be separate, we can click on the ones I added second here, and you can create a new connection. So it's the first little icon that pops up for this. And all you would do in this case is it's going to say 2 from there. So let me just show you that one more time. You just click the create a new connection, and now you have 2 within here. If I do the same thing again, I could have them completely separate through here. So I could have 1, 2, and 3, or I can repoint it to use an existing connection, and it would be now a 2. So you can specify what you want on here. And so you can have things that react and things that don't react within this. This is almost, if you were doing this in Report Studio, this would be like creating 2 different parameter names. And then you could click and have some information. But we don't have to do it in this case. It's very simple to connect. All we would do at the end is turn that off. And in one chart, I could pick 2011. In the other chart, I could pick 2010. And I could, and you'll notice that only the one that's below it reacts when you're doing this. So you have the ability to set these connections and work with it like that. You don't have to do this one. I'm just going to very quickly show you how to have no connection if we want. So don't you just have to, if you want to watch this one for 1 second. Let's say I take the revenue number and I drag it up to the top. Will you drag to the bottom like this? Right now, revenue is going to be connected to the one that I would have here, but if I would like this revenue at the bottom to be completely disconnected and always show my lifetime revenue within, I can break my connection, completely, where it's completely independent. And what I can do now, it's not going to be pretty since it's hard to see on this, but when I filter these guys, nothing happens to the one on the bottom. Hold up. There. So that's a little bit of the dashboarding, a little bit of the feel of Cognos Analytics. Does anybody have any questions about any of this so far? That's kind of some of the newer features that are added in here. And those are pretty new if you're coming from the Cognos 10 world. These are things that are actually new entirely, where we haven't had access to a lot of this stuff before. Yeah, it depends on, usually I think it's 3,000 rows that's set for some of these objects. You can bump that up if you need to. So it depends on which object it is you're looking at.
What was that?
Oh, sorry, the data limitations for the different objects within here. I think it depends on what object you're looking at, what type of limitation you have for row count.
One of the question was, we tried using data modules using the export file.
Yeah.
Can you show me where exactly we can use like 2 sources, for example, TM1 data source and another OLAP data source together to come up with these 2 charts?
Yeah, so the question is, can you use multiple, completely different sources within a dashboard? And the answer is yes. You can actually do that now, actually, even within a Report Studio report as well. But over on the side, we can add, so you can actually add multiple sources to one of our dashboards. So we can click here, and let's say we added our census data, which is a completely different source. Let's say, I'll just use the uploaded file. So you can add another source as well. And we could, again, I don't have much room on my display, but we can have completely different sources of data blended together on here. Now, if you need them to be prompted together, that's where I think you would have an issue at this point. I don't think there's a way to do that. The way you'd have to do that probably in this case is merge them into a data module, do your joins and relationships inside of the data module, and then bring that in as a source.
Does it matter, I mean, when we import the data, does it follow a simplistic format, just like Power BI does, or is it really going to say, the relational data versus multidimensional import? So when you join it, that's probably going to be a problem unless it really follows the same format.
I don't know, do you know, have you tried to?
Yeah, I haven't tried to do that, so I can't say whether it works or not, but if it doesn't, what you could do, and this is kind of just adding another layer of abstraction, but it would work, is there's a feature in here that we basically never show, although it's very cool, called data sets, right? So what you could do is, let's say you had an OLAP source and a relational source, and the data module can't join them together. What you could do is create data sets off of them. When you create a data set, what it's going to do is it's going to create a Parquet file, so it's a columnar data store that's going to put in the content store. You create that data set off of your OLAP and your relational source, And then you use those as the data source for your data module, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so I think
That's the, I mean, yeah, that would also work.
I haven't tried to join a dimensional. Has anybody tried to join a dimensional and a non-dimensional?
I haven't had that.
I'm not sure how those data items would interact with the months. So
Yeah, I mean, it's, that's a good question. When you built the data set, you wouldn't, so it would, like the data set then is no longer an OLAP source. So the whole like trying to map a relational thing to a MUN is no longer a problem, right?
okay.
And those data sets, for your, if you're curious, I mean, they're easy to build. They're stored in the content store. When you access one, it loads it into the Cognos memory. So the query performance is pretty good. And then you can also schedule them and filter them. So one thing you might use it for is, hey, we got a huge data source. We really only want current year. Let's build a data set that's filtered to current year, schedule it to upload every morning. And now instead of querying that database, it's going to query the data set in Cognos memory.
So if you can build data sets and store in the Cognos store, does that mean you have to raise the size of your Cognos store? Because usually that's the smallest database you can stick out there, right? I mean,
Yeah.
It's not.
Yeah, so I mean, essentially, yes, the file is not huge by default, you know, because it compresses it pretty good when it thinks that Parquet file, but you could need to do that. Now, the long-term solution is not to house that in the content store, and that's the direction originally they weren't housed in the content store at all. But the problem then that was caused was, well, what server is it on, right? If I have 10 application servers, do we replicate the data set to all 10? I would say, yeah, put it into Hadoop, duh. But, but you know, they didn't take that step. So eventually that's where it's going, where it's not going to be in the content store, but for the time being, that's where it's stored.
Any other questions? I want to show you one last super quick feature, and I think I'll just show it and rather than step through it. And if you want to go through the steps at some point, we can certainly talk about it. One of the other benefits of the data module, which I think is a very cool new feature that we will hopefully be taking advantage of, is the ability to add drill down capabilities or navigation path capabilities to relational data. So not going through a DMR and having to set up that entirely new level of data, but in this case, this is using the Go Sales sample database. I brought in just a few different tables to represent our information, and I would like to represent our company's regional sales hierarchy inside the data module. So this is a relational database, straight SQL, no dimensional capabilities turned on. So within my data module, I can create something called a navigation path. And it's set under the properties of our data module. It's called a navigation group inside of here. Oh, 1 second, let me show you, since this was not the server I was going to use. But so I can add my navigation group here, and I'll call this my sales areas, let's say, within here. And then what you can do is you can dimensionally kind of represent your dimensions of your company. So I can put my sales region, my country, and my branch name, let's say, branch city through here. A little bit like making a cube. For those of you who are sort of longtime Cognos people and you built cubes in the past, this is a similar idea where I can set my dimensional data. I can add it to my data module here, and if I save it and I come back over and create a dashboard based on it here quickly, just to show you what it looks like. So there's my dashboard, or my data module that I've created. If I go in and I create a dashboard based on this, you'll see that it has a navigation path. Sorry to get rid of the old ones, apparently. But there's my sales area that comes in here. And if I wanted to build my my report, so let's say I built what we had just a second ago. So product line, and this time I'll do my region, and I'll do, like I said, super quick quantity. I'll build my display. So as I said, this is a relational database, a straight SQL database. If I come up here, you'll notice this little icon, which is my drill down icon, which we wouldn't be able to do in a regular framework manager package unless we did DMR type stuff. But you'll notice here that I can now sort of drill down through my relational data by sort of mapping out what I like inside of my data module. So that's one way you can do it. The other neat feature of those navigation groups is it doesn't have to be related data. So I could click on a country and it might take me over to a year, or I could take a country and it may take me to order methods, or whatever you like, whatever your path you want to take somebody through your data. So those are just some of the newer features within Cognos Analytics, and if you haven't had a chance to really play with it, it's a neat new feature, and it's been getting better every release. Every release of the dashboard tool has gotten better and more functional, and you can do a lot more with it. So that's really all of our time for today. But if you have any questions, stick around, and we can certainly talk about it. Or if you want to ask the group, we can do that. But
I have a quick question.
yeah.
Does it support multi-data source? When I submit a data source, like I have tables in Oracle and DB2 database, can I build it on top of both database?
I think you can use any data. I think you have to figure if you can join them if you needed them joined, but you can definitely use it.
As long as you can logically join them, you can do that. And there's also a feature to help performance where you could define the way that join works to say, hey, filter one side of the join by the other side of the join. So if your table in SQL Server is huge and your table Oracle in Oracle is small, you retrieve the result set from the Oracle table, and then use that as the filter to retrieve the result set from the SQL Server table.